he's just ready, ready, ready. It's great. So Mike Ashebrainer, the redneck connector with a K in the middle of it. And he's just got something I shouldn't try to imitate, but it's the way that he talks from the state that he lives in the Southeast. And he said, make sure that you make meaningful comments, not the default, woot woot for you or something, but make a meaningful comment. And I'm like, I never used to think of it as writing content. I just love to, make sure if I'm going to, when we licked stamps and I stuck it on there, that it was going to be worth ripping open and reading. So, and it's just kind of continued to evolve through other kinds of writing. So, Barbara, BK Books has bookends today. You've got your family flanking you. Barbara, would you please introduce yourself for the one or two people who have not met you on the earth, and and introduce your entourage. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Barbara Carnes. I'm a registered nurse. I am an author of end-of-life education material. I started end-of-life work in, you ready? 1981, when people couldn't even say the word hospice, let alone knew what it was. And 5 years, I was a primary care nurse for hospice. All of my patients died. And they taught me everything I know. Mm-hmm. They taught me how people die. Our medical model deals with diseases and making people well. End of life deals with people that happen to have diseases. And our goal is to help people live the best they can until they're not. So for 5 years, I was hospice nurse. After 5 years, I became the director of the hospice that I started with, and then moved on a few years later to be the director of another hospice. So I've worked both sides of hospice, direct patient care and administrative work, as well as being active in the state board, national, NHPCO, all of that. So I really kind of have a rounded end of life experience. And out of that came a booklet called Gone From My Sight, which has taken on a life of its own and developed into BK Books. And then I have written other, oh gosh, I don't even know how many, a lot of other materials. When I saw a need, I wrote. And everything I write, 5th grade level, short, simple, direct, but gentle. No medical ease. It's so that anyone who is dealing with a life-threatening, a life-ending situation can quietly sit down and in about 15 minutes get a background and a foundation on end of life.
Excellent. That was like the one question I was going to ask you, and I thought I don't want to put her on the spot. How many different things have you written? And the answer is, I don't know. I haven't sat down and 17, 18. Now this one, but it's been, redone. But anyway, you've got lovely ladies that you spend quite a bit of time with.
I got to talking a lot. This is family. BK Books is family operated. This is Jacqueline. She's my daughter. This is Julia. This is my daughter-in-law, but really a daughter of my heart. Okay. So we're the team. And
Wow.
Jackie runs the business. Julia runs all the, what would you say, the outgoing, the social media, the
public communications.
Thank you.
I was told that the other day by some lady who has attached herself to me happily. She goes, "You're in public communications. Just tell people that." And they'll nod, even if they don't understand. Okay. Oh, what fun. I have to tell you, Lisa Fevick is on. And Lisa, if you are still able to, if you're in a situation where you can pop in a comment, am I saying it right? You're in Trinidad and Tobago? Hey, do you know Laura? She just popped onto the screen.
We're saying hi. I see it comes up. That's so fantastic.
I know. Thank you to my hubby producer. Oh, hi, Laura Morrison. Oh, great. The friends are tumbling into the room here. And really, Lisa, Laura, anyone, you can pop in something about what you do, because this is going to be seen again and again when I'm sticking it into posts and comments all the time, so people can know what you're about. Laura has a new picture, so I had to get used to that. But you three, you know Laura Morrison, yes or no? Oh, golly, I did it again. Oh, I don't want to stump the panel.
You stumped us.
You stumped us.
Well, and then she's going to, okay, end of life doula. There we go.
Barbara loves
we
doulas.
Love, end of life doulas. I consider myself.
IDLM.
Of course. I consider myself an end of life doula. That's the work that I started out doing, is what end of life doulas are doing today. Hospice has changed and actually become a little more medical, maybe a lot more medical. And end of life doulas, their gift, aside from knowledge, is time. They have the time to be with the family and the patient. And love my end of life doulas. Oh, you notice I claimed them. I just said mine.
You belong to Barbara. Yay! Oh, great. Well, that's our show, folks. We're done. We've just, made everyone feel good, and we were saying hi to everyone. Doulas, I had to look that up because I decided to write one of my pre-act your age prompted journal 2-page spreads. I titled it, "I Need an Aging Doula!" Because I looked it up as our pastor's wife and someone else also attending our church were finishing the course on being birth doulas, which is what I've heard of first. I'm like, what does a doula do? Oh, Jacqueline, you're raising your hand. What? You're a doula?
Oh, I'm a birth doula. I'm not currently doing it, but I did it years ago before I started working with the company.
Oh, wow. And Laura says she also works with people who have dementia. So what I learned when, I just Googled it, and I would love for you to expand on that. I was going to ask which one of you would like to speak on just the whole doula thing. What I learned was that person, their number one priority is to be the voice or the hands or to pass along the core values, the wishes of that one person who is going through it, so that, you know, you're not standing up in the stirrups, getting back to the birth thing, going, no, not all of you can be in here. I've got work to do. And as Barbara will say, that dying is a work, that they're working at it. And if you've been able to be with a person who knows that they are going to reach the end within a limited amount of time, and to just have them know, you know what, I would just ask that people come in just for a few minutes and that they leave, maybe just one or two at a time. When it comes to that point, from all that I've learned from BK books about what that process will be like for me, I don't want prolonged, because right now I don't want to think of them sobbing over me, or I don't want to be there and suddenly have a conversation erupt about something. It's like, no, we were going to do that at the funeral. It's like, you know, let's just keep it simple or something, and that person could, you know, that's what I imagine. So I'm going to stop imagining. And Jacqueline, I'm going to say, with the birthing doula, what did you see as, was it a primary responsibility, or was it just different with every single situation that you were brought into as a doula?
Well, I will say I only attended a few births, sorry. But what was interesting to me when I did my training, I was a yoga teacher at the time, and I had started teaching prenatal yoga, and that led me into learning how to be a birth doula. And having grown up with Barbara Carnes and attended both of my grandmothers, or was with both of my grandmothers when they died, I had a good picture of what death was like and what it was like to support somebody through that process. And going through my training as a birth doula, I was so surprised at the similarities and the parallels between supporting somebody at end of life, which I had learned growing up, and then supporting someone at the beginning of life and coming into the world. And I found it very interesting, as I did attend the births, of just the energy in the room and the sacred space that's created when somebody is coming into the world and when somebody is going out of the world. And the care that's needed as you're the advocate to that person, and helping them through that process. I was so surprised, and of course ran home and, Mom, let's talk about this, because it was so similar.
Barbara always talks about and trains, when she's training, she says that the hospice nurse, the team, they become the conductors. That's what you call it at end of life.
I think that these two very monumental parts of our life, when we arrive and when we leave, and when we arrive, someone else is doing everything for us to get us here. And when we leave, someone else is doing everything to support us when we leave. And it's kind of, for end of life, what I see the trained person there, whether that's hospice or an end of life doula, it's like an orchestra conductor. That conductor holds everyone together and guides them in the music that they're making. And as end of life is occurring, that's where we can make this the sacred experience for the family and for the person. But because most of us don't know what's happening or what to do, just like when birth into this world comes, it's really beneficial and helpful to have someone guide us through that experience.
And guide the family.
And the family. Family is as much a part of the birth into the other world as the mother is in being birthed into this world. Yeah, really, it's hard to do it alone.
And what are some of the things that you always say? Because I just used your teachings with my father's death around my family, who was standing back, afraid to bother him, afraid to touch. And
keep going. Tell the story.
So in the conducting, Barbara's written a lot of blogs and also in her videos and her teaching. I walked in and my siblings and my mother were far away from the bed, and they were like they were praying, they were holding space, but they were afraid to touch or bother my father. And he was very close to death. And so I told my sister, I said, get in bed with him, hold him. Matthew, come over, touch his head. He needs I'm warming up his feet. And we're talking to him. And I say to my father, I say, Dad, if you know we're here, will you squeeze Amy's hand? And even that close to death, he squeezed Amy's hand. And he was completely in making his place in the next world. And he still came back to acknowledge. And my siblings thanked me so much. And I said, I pulled in Barbara, and this can be sacred. We can talk to him. We had grandchildren on the phone with him, and he wouldn't say anything, but they thanked him for all that, what a grandfather does and the teachings and all of that. And I was so grateful that I had this knowledge. And it was a remarkably beautiful experience in an ICU. And it's all because of that.
That just changed the whole story for me when you framed it in the ICU, because when you described everything, I thought at home.
No.
It felt like home to do that. This is it's in my archives. There was a conversation. I know that Christina Keys was one of the people, and I would make a mistake on the other person, but the third guest was Steve Berger, who's also been very supportive of aspects of aging and coming in with comments and coming in as a guest. And he said, well, something like, while I have you on the screen, I just want to know, did it make a difference when I sat there and talked to each of my passing loved ones? Did it make a difference? And I was able to share from when I was shoulder to shoulder with hospice people, trained hospice workers. But then I was there in the span of time when they weren't there, because family just didn't want to be alone at that time. And I got to share of a situation that occurred when there was no response. Suddenly a response happened, and I was able to write that into the notes and to share that with family. And it was because something that was a rhythm in life and a sound just alerted that person. They weren't in the room at the moment. And so I was able to share that with family. The other person was Christina Keys, who is right nearby you. She is also in Vancouver, Washington area. Christina Keys. And she was able to talk about how her mom just perked up, and that both she and the person who had come just in friendship, just to be there, going, just went through this a few months ago too, just didn't want you to be alone. And what they thought wasn't even being heard and being spoken about was suddenly responded to.
Wow.
Again, after, and it's like, it all does matter. And I wasn't able to be there for my own father. I was many thousands of miles away. And I did, he passed away before his younger brother, and he passed away before his mother. And I got to be there with my dad's mom and, with that grandma. And I got to be there with his brother who didn't have, wife, children, grandchildren, but, loving nieces and nephews. And I'm grateful to both of them that they both waited for me, because it gave me that moment that I missed with my own dad. And I'll see him someday, and I'll tell them, thank you for waiting until I could arrive, because I had to drive for an hour and a half. Hey, Russ Hedge is popping in with a goody morning to you. He is in the Salem area. I used to live near him, but Scott and I moved to Texas, and I get to volunteer with a gal that has worked for 35 years creating, she saw a gap and filled that need because she didn't see anything else. And it has to do with people aging out who have developmental disabilities. So they've aged out of their family. Maybe their parents are passing away or no longer able to provide guidance for them and education and assurance, and make sure that everything is being done for their best life, as well as people. My job is to drive people to appointments and errands, and I love it. Got another list this morning. Can you do any of these? I'm like, yes. Oh, can't do those because they're at the same time, but I can do that one and that one. And what a joy to meet people who have lived here in Texas for a long time, lived in Waco, and they get to tell me the places where they used to hang out, and I always get to hear, of course, that was years ago. Similar to Barbara saying 1981 was when she started. Now, I remember 1981 very clearly. I had met a man who was going into the Air Force, so I crossed him off my list. He was going to go off to lands unknown and probably find someone else, but he came back, and we wrote a lot of letters. He came back on a leave, and we wrote a lot of letters, and 40 years later. So I remember 1981. So you were making a big difference then. When I go to bkbooks.com, I see that you can order your books in more than English, more than one language. Mm-hmm. So I think that the one language you will never, ever allow anyone to translate your books into is medicalese. It's like, turn this back into clinical and sterile, big words and no. But you've got a lot of languages going, and I think some of them might surprise our audience.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've just, over the years, working with different hospices, we've had a lot of requests where people reach out and say, we have a really large contingency of this group of people, and to be able to read the materials in their native language is so helpful. Whether someone speaks English or doesn't speak English, if if they can read in their native language, it really helps them. So we have all sorts of, well, everything is available in Spanish, as that was the first language that we translated. And then I think we went to French next for Canada. We did some French Canadian, Russian, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, Chinese,
both
simplified and traditional. Let's see, what else?
Armenian.
We got it all.
Because someone requested. It's like, it would be wonderful if those who, I've heard it described as heart language. It's like, now I'm not just reading information. Now they're speaking to my feelings. And I was reminded of that your blogs that you do, which I can't even imagine, if you get lots and lots of questions, and either Jacqueline or Julia goes, let's just do this one. There's a lot to choose from. But people want to know, are we doing this right? Am I dying right? Are we serving this person right? Everything from how much pain reliever is okay to, you talked about it. Is it okay to touch them?
Why or how I write blogs is something will pop into my head, or, just recently, kinds of diseases popped into my head, sat down and write a blog about it. I get emails daily from people, and I will take their major concern and often write a blog about it. So it's whatever pops into my head that I think is pertinent at the moment, sit down at my computer and write a blog. And then I send it to Julia, and she's then does what she does as far as categorizing and getting them out there. But it's really just spontaneous as to why I write about a particular situation.
Wow. It just twangs your heartstring, or the thought occurs and it pours out of you. You nurse, you said, I've heard you say on way, I don't want to say too many shows, but I'm like, how many shows has she been on? That you're like, I should have been a social worker. You are definitely first and foremost an informer, an educator, a guide. You just do not want somebody to feel like I guess I'm going in and here it is, and if only I knew something. And just mentioning again that I served in homes because I was a hired caregiver in other people's private residences last decade, so almost 100 different residences, and I saw BK books on a hallway table, and I imagined that they were left there by maybe a hospice person who was leaving or something, and just set them down there as they were going. And there was definitely a BK book or two on a nightstand, and it may have been the person themselves who know, I'm on hospice, this is happening, and I can handle a paragraph or two, and they're just not daunting. It takes what, 2 staples to hold these things together, right? It's like, please read this manual. Refer to page 416. Ugh.
I wrote a booklet for the person who is diagnosed with a life-threatening illness. on how to live the best they can within the confines that their body and disease has put them in. That is more, no, let me reword it. Gone from my sight for most patients seems scary. It's really for the family and the caregivers. Once in a while, I will have a patient, if they're early in their disease process, who wants to read it and see what the process is. But most patients, most people with a life-threatening illness don't want to read Gone from My Sight. They need a time to live, on how to use this time that they have the best they can.
I'm going to tell a little story. You said next to the on the nightstand.
Yeah.
Barbara got an email from a woman who said, I was so grateful to have Gone from My Sight because my husband was withdrawing, and no one talks about withdrawal as a sign of approaching death. And she said, my husband just he was distant. He was not talking to me. And so every night when I would climb into bed, I would read where I thought he was, and then I would put it down. And one night she came back to bed. She crawls into bed next to him. She opens the booklet, and he has underlined and wrote her a note and said, my dear, I believe I am right here in the process. And she said that it was so connecting for her. That's the beauty of having something tangible. You can write notes, you can underline, you can, if you underline, you can ask your hospice nurse when she comes, oh, what was it that I wanted to ask you about? Go to the book. It's so brilliant that it's this little pamphlet that you can pop in your bag. It's such a gift, and it's a gift not only to the family, but to the agency to say, oh, you're worried about this. Let's turn to page 12. Do you see? And then everybody's like, it's such a gift that you created. All of them are.
It also helps people, families, when you have several different family members together in the same room, to have them all reading the material, because people come to the deathbed with different ideas of, no, we need to get IV fluids, or we need to get her up and get her walking around.
Yeah. Because
there's just misinformation out there. And so when they have a book that they can just pass around and everybody understands, oh, okay.
Everybody's on the same page.
Everybody's on the same page.
Literally.
This is what we're doing. This is how it's handling. And it's not just, well, I heard that you're supposed to do this and you heard something different. Who's right? This is what the professional is, this is the way to do it. It can just take some of that arguing or debating out of the question.
That's a great point.
Wow. Yes, they call it being on the same page. And for someone to be able to voice, I don't see this happening. I mean, you're saying you are, but I'm just not seeing it. There's common ground for comparing notes, and and everyone's going to approach it in a different way. There will be the one who says, they look fine to me. I don't think, we're talking weeks, months, I don't know, years. And here's another person going, I think they're in denial, or whatever, but just to, and then you have someone else, who wants to get the details done. Do we know where the important paperwork is? Have we
Right.
located? Have we made this phone call? It's the worst emotional moment. I just, it's the dance and everyone's stepping on each other's toes. I will say very briefly, there was a situation that could not have been more complicated. And a person came to me later and said, an apology for the emotions that
Oh.
were flying.
Mhm.
And I said, you were forgiven before I ever stopped the car, because I knew I was walking into the most impossible emotional situation.
Mm.
This person is physically active, but at any moment, a little nap could turn into no flutter of eyelids again. Just any moment. And so I needed to accept that apology, to let that person know, and then just let them know, oh, yep, the forgiveness was already there. I have enough understanding to know this is just too tough. So I feel like, Jacqueline, were you reaching for one of the books or something? I want to make sure that you get a chance to talk about a course that we talked about before we even went live.
Well, I was just going to comment on what you were saying about about families being on the same page. And when we're taking care of somebody, there's a certain way we all know how to take care of somebody who's getting better. We've all cared for family members. And so when that care gets applied at the bedside of somebody who's dying, it's very different. And so I think finding people that have a difference of opinion of like, well, I know how to care for somebody. This is what we do to care. But at end of life, it's actually different. And that's another way that the books come in helpful, because they teach you how to care for somebody at end of life. And Barbara, always very clearly says taking care of somebody at end of life is different than taking care of somebody who's going to get better.
Which is why you just wrote the food book. She has a new booklet called Always Offer, Never Force, Food at End of Life. And why don't you explain why you wrote that booklet?
I have known forever, or all these years, that food is a major factor in end of life. But it wasn't until my husband was dying, which was a year and a half ago, that I really, in a caregiver's shoes, appreciated the desire and the forcefulness to get our special person to eat. I did everything possible, and we argued over him not eating, and I knew better. But if he didn't eat, he was going to die. And I was trying so hard to keep him alive while his body was preparing to die. So after he was gone, I realized how very, very important food is, and the struggle that it is for the caregiver, having walked in those shoes. So even though in Gone From My Sight and in the 11th Hour, I address food, I wrote its own standalone booklet, because I think food is one of the major factors that caregivers have trouble with. And so now it's got its own standalone booklet, Always Offer.
It's interesting because Barbara had an epiphany and she said, oh my gosh, I'm trying to keep him alive, and that is going to make his death more difficult. So she had that information and she was able to let it go. Now we're finding that agencies are, all kinds of hospice and home health agencies are clamoring for this booklet that we had no idea was necessary, because they're now giving it to the families, and the families are reading, oh, so hydration, how hydration works is if you don't drink because you don't want to, you don't need it, then the calcium raises in the body and makes you sleepy and sleepier, and you drift off. But if you force the hydration, you basically drown, which is a terrible death. But families don't know that. They think, don't let him get dehydrated. So these booklets just help to make a more sacred dying experience for the patient and families who now have this knowledge. And as Barbara always says, knowledge reduces fear. That's so true.
It really bothered me that my grandmother's lips looked parched.
Oh.
And oh, go ahead. You know, and I was just like, fix her. She's uncomfortable, you know, getting that desperate last moment. Yeah.
A little glycerin, a little Vaseline, a little moisture on the lips. That's fine. And we should do that as a comfort measure. But if the person is responsive, and that's underline, if they're responsive and their mouth is dry, rather than force fluids, always offer fluids, but frozen grapes are great. Suck on ice cubes are great. They have to be alert to do that. And so that would be in the months to weeks before death. Once a person has entered labor, which is really 1 to 3 weeks, their body is shutting down. They don't need fluids or food you offer, but their awareness isn't at a place where you're going to trust putting a frozen grape in their mouth or an ice cube in their mouth. So once labor has begun, moisten their lips, take a swab and moisten their tongue or their mouth. We can keep them comfortable without increasing fluids and making them uncomfortable.
I remember that little white stick, the little pink sponge, and that it was kind of ziggy-zaggy, and the little cup of glycerin so that the nurse gave to comfort me, right? That I could do something. It's okay to go in the mouth. Just, you know, if the mouth opens a little bit, you know, and so yeah. Is that, do you know, is that kind of a standard for hospice? Do they bring something like that and leave it at, I'm asking a crazy question, because how would you know what every single hospice organization does?
I can say that the hospice that we used just brought everything imaginable that I could possibly ever want to use. Now, I can only speak for the hospice I worked with, because hospices are different and they have different policies and they do different things. So, but I would think that mouth care is very much a part of end of life care, and therefore that situation will be addressed and is addressed. I can't imagine that it isn't.
Yes, it ought to be. Oh, and there was talk about a course for long-term care agencies, for any others that you have prepared, or is it coming out later?
It's out right now.
Good, good.
So Barbara was asked to write and put together an end-of-life course that hospices, end-of-life doulas, and home health care workers can take. Nursing facilities, exactly, memory cares. And she created it with a company called Activated Insights. And this course is a standalone course through that company that can be taken on its own. And what Barbara has found is, working as she was an administrator for a home health, if that team doesn't understand end of life care and how to recognize the dying experience, then they're going to be trying to fix that patient, that client, all the way till their death, which is not the kind of care they need. So she put together this course. It's on our website. What is that called, Jackie? The bar?
Menu.
The menu. On the menu, it says course. And you can take that course and have the whole staff take it. And then people always say, well, I work in home health. I work at a retirement community. I work at a memory care facility. I don't need end-of-life care. And Barbara always says, do your patients die? They don't move once they go into the dying process. They stay there. And you need education so that you can care for them and their families best. And it's not, this is an American course. This is an end-of-life course. So it doesn't talk about rules and regulations. So you could take it if you were in Ireland or Canada or Mexico. It doesn't matter. It just applies to humans. Humans who care for humans.
Oh my goodness.
A lot more work with home care, the home care community. Over the years, we've really focused on hospice and palliative care, but really lately there's been a big push in the home care community to learn more about end of life. And because, as Julia said, because their patients are dying, and being able to recognize, excuse me, to be able to recognize those signs that, oh, this person is actually entering the dying process. If you don't have the education on what the dying process is, you can't relay that information or understand why the person's eating is slowing down, why they're sleeping more. Those are the signs to look for. And so we want to have our home care teams trained in the end of life signs of approaching death, so that they can educate the family and work with the families so that they can make choices if they want to move to hospice or if they want to stay with their home care provider, which many do. But having the home care provider have that knowledge and information. So Barbara's been doing a lot of trainings with them and working with the home care community.
We are sadly winding down on this time. It's been wonderful. I really looked forward to this. The very first time, Barbara, that you said yes, I really think my head scraped the ceiling, and we had tall ceilings at that time. I'm just like, I'm not getting anything done. I just keep thinking about this, because you went with me as a caregiver, because I saw your books, and so I became familiar with them. I had that opportunity. Sometimes caregiving is companionship and just making sure of things, and you reach for something to read while you're just sitting. And the other person, which I believe you two have interacted now, Teepa Snow, that makes sense because dementia doesn't play by the rules.
Right.
It can really, the most trained medical professional who's looking at their loved one going, okay, I'm seeing all the indicators. And then things just rev up again. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. But just the different ways to approach a person. And there's so many different types of dementia. So a few months ago, I actually asked Amanda, I'm going to say Bulgarelli, but it's Amanda Snow Bulgarelli, came on, and we did VIP tickets for the other people that were going to be on the screen. They all had to be in some sort of a dementia space already. And I let them do all the questions, and it was a blast because Amanda said, and my eye is on the time. Amanda said, I was so not going to do what my mom was doing. I was going to go into my world, my business world, but I could see that mom's interactions were building, and she wasn't a business person. So I'm like, Mom, I'm going to help you out with this. Mom, I'm going to help you out with this. And then Mom was helping her out. And she goes, and here I am. Now I teach courses, and I'm involved, and I do hand over hand, how to approach and all this. So I'm all into it. And some of the people on the screen had actually taken a course with her in person, and others were like, I've only heard of this, in my corner of the whole dementia map there. I'm just going to end us up with, here was someone who was born into the family. Here is someone who entered into the family. Do you want to say anything about your path to this point of how you are now all businesswomen together making this happen? Would either of you like to say that? And then we'll give Barbara the last hurrah.
Well, I grew up with end of life, and Barbara going to, or my mom, I'll just say that, my mom going to funerals every week, and being up all night with people who were dying every week. So death was very much a conversation a daily conversation in our house. And in high school, she had gotten me involved with some organizations, Teens Tap, which was Teens Teaching AIDS Prevention. And that was an incredible, introduction. And I used to work a hotline, and every Friday night, and talk to other teens who had questions about AIDS. And we would go to schools and talk to the students who were afraid to sit in the same chair as somebody who had AIDS, or I won't come to school and drink out of the drinking fountain. There was just a lot of misinformation, fear, at the time. And excuse me. So I had learned from Barbara all about AIDS prevention and how it spread, and I was able to share that with other teens. And so that was in my teen years. And then as time went on, I started to do conventions with them. So that was my introduction into, when I was in my 20s, doing conventions with them. And then in my 30s, I moved here and started working for the company.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for taking us along on that. So, Mom the Nurse was really a, a great place to go. Mom, when, the other teenagers say this, what's going to be the best thing to say that's like, oh, well, that's factual scientific information.
Mhm.
And so now we've got the came in by marriage. And I'm just wondering, did you meet her son first, or were you already aware of Barbara? Because who knows, you two could have been already working together. I'm about to hear. Go ahead.
My husband and I met, and one of the things that they always say, if you're going to marry someone, just know you're going to marry the family. And the very first time I met the family, we were having breakfast at a breakfast place, and Barbara and Jack were talking about something political that had happened in the news. And my husband said, oh, well, I interpreted that this way. And Jack said, well, that's a very interesting way to look at it. I'm going to think about that. And I thought, wow, their young son, you're listening to him and you're taking his perspective. And I thought, wow, this is a good family. And so I haven't been wrong. And so we were living in Los Angeles, and we wanted our children not to go to high school in Los Angeles. So we moved up here, and Jackie came to me and said, we want to get Barbara's message out a little further, and we don't really know social media or any of that. And I said, I don't either, but let me try. And I'll tell you, during the pandemic, the world was really difficult, and going to work every day and getting Barbara's message out and seeing these droplets that were helping people, it gave me a reason to get up in the morning. It really helped with that, with the blues that came with the pandemic. And every day I'm so happy. I'm so happy to help another family or agency and just educate them on, or bring to light that this information is available. And my son is now working in the office and went with the two of them last week to a conference to help. So it's all in the family.
Yay! Oh, I love it. Well, good job, Barbara. You have this amazing daughter. You have this son who definitely picked a winner. And so I am aware that we are rolling out of here. I know there have been many situations where you could only say one thing because that's all they could hear. Can you just give us an idea of that, and then I'll wave goodbye? That person needs to hear one thing.
We always do the best we can.
Yeah.
How's that?
I love it. I am waving goodbye, sadly, reluctantly, and saying thank you so much. Thank you for coming to my screen. Oh boy, are people going to love watching this. Bye, ladies.